Boo hurt, catch the vibe we bring. Xander and Carly got this podcast thing. Nights with Riz and band to the spare. They slay the mic like they just don't care. Let's go! Boo hurt, yeah, you know the name. Boo hurt, in the podcast game. Turn it up loud and enjoy the show. Xander and Carly are ready. Let's go!
Hi, welcome to the Boo Hurt podcast, where we teach you all things Boo Hurt armored combat, and today we're going to talk about Outrance. Mm-hmm. I'm your host. Oh, no. Let me introduce myself. I'm the host. Yeah. Me, I'm Carly Winquest, and this is my co-host.
Xander Straub.
People
don't know me with the last name, so it keeps being weird saying it out loud.
Xander Crahan on Facebook.
No, that's just on Facebook.
But Armored Xander on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
And I'm Carly Darko on Instagram.
Geez. They all know. Why are you plugging everything?
Oh, yeah. Well, like, seriously. Like, we... a bunch of girls and I didn't know each other because we didn't know... We just introduced ourselves by our names, and we were like, oh, I'm Seamstress by night. Oh, I'm, I know who you are. So,
yeah.
So it's important. But anyway, we're here today to talk specifically about Outrance.
Yes. So how we understand the topic is pro fighting is one of the three different formats of armored combat that we look at, which it's a one-on-one format that includes striking with all of the limbs, the knees, not the head. You can, but no points usually. And it always has a layer of, is there ground fighting or no ground fighting? And it can go to TKO or KO. So we find in these formats, there's a lot more full body brutality, grappling's more involved, just generally more cross training type, like cross fighting and things like that. We see a little bit more of that mixed martial art, that MMA in these formats, because in a lot of the dueling formats, we find ourselves just in weapon formats.
Yeah, just weapon touches. So this is supposed to reflect as close as somebody else in the mainstream might be able to recognize as a UFC fight.
Your cage fighting.
A cage fight.
Right.
But there are key differences because we're using weapons and historical analogs.
Yes. And it's known. Pro fight is the term that you can find strings across the leagues the most often. Whilst Outrance will be what will be focusing on the most, which is the Boo Hurt International name for it, which means to the extreme. We love it.
Boo Hurt International being one of the major players in international leagues.
Yes.
They provide marshals, they organize events, and they rank their fighters over like multiple tournaments. So it's a really neat league if you are a competitive fighter to get involved in.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, very, very
and
well organized.
It has something for everybody too. So
yes, it covers a lot of different events. So if you're interested in dueling, that's like lighter touch armored combat, or if you want to do like the heaviest touch, the Boo Hurt, that's also I think the best league.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're competitive and you want to rank amongst your fellow peers. So yeah.
I find it really, like, our team's been putting a lot of energy into Boo Hurt International over other leagues because of that ranking system, so it's been nice. But just to jump back, so as far as Outrance and Pro Fight is concerned, we I don't really know which came first, so like Danny is like the guy to talk to about it.
Let's introduce our guest,
right?
Danny George.
Right. So we'll bring him on, and he's waiting there behind the scenes. He's just like sitting there patiently waiting to explode with information. So, Danny, are you ready? Are you ready to come on?
I'm ready to come on.
All right. It's just you now. We're gonna be quiet.
Hello, everybody. I'm Danny George. Quick introduction about myself. I am a fighter. I'm a team captain, a gym owner, a marshal. I'm the head of Outrance for Boo Hurt International, and I am a member of the Boo Hurt International board. So very much engrossed in all aspects of the sport, Boo Hurt International. But today I'm going to talk to you about something I'm really passionate about, which is Outrance, more commonly known as pro fights.
Sweet. So we're back. Your introduction was very succinct. A skill I'm not good at.
Yeah, we'll go on and riff. But Danny, I'm really excited to talk to you. I've been mainly a Boo Hurt fighter. I've dabbled a little bit in pro fight Outrance, like one-on-one full contact type of fights. So like I have lots of questions for you as a competitor. But like I just kind of want you to take it. Can you explain to us like where this started and like how this evolved, because like I know Buhurt came first.
Wait, really quick for our American selves, myself
Sorry.
included. So can you define the difference, like Buhurt as a word, how you use it? Because I'm familiar with Buhurt as everything armored combat, but I've been informed it's something different. So Buhurt.
Yeah, so historically in the kind of European circles, Buhurt was used for the group fights. You've obviously got Buhurt duels, which is your dueling, and then Outrance is the word that in Europe typically is your pro fights, your single one-on-one MMA and armor type discipline. Buhurt's used kind of colloquially to reference everything armored combat, I think, for everybody. But yeah, there's different terms and different words for it.
All right.
Okay,
So
so-
in our conversation, we want to use
Yeah.
Buhurt as melee, Outrance as pro fight, and
Okay.
any sort of dueling. Just because I know, like, we'll be like, oh, when you're doing Buhurt, and I'm like, wait, does this mean melee or does
Well,
this
I
mean?
don't. I like using Buhurt colloquially to like encompass all things armor combat. I think it's a good definition to like separate it from like LARP or SCA or like any of the foam leagues, and like put it in like squarely like steel armor with steel weapons, full contact.
Right.
Buhurt.
Yeah.
All right, back into it. So you were asking, you were asking Danny here about how he got into pro fighting and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm wondering how, because I think that's fairly newer, or am I wrong? Is there always been this category?
This category has been around for quite a while. Obviously, formerly it was mainly pushed under HMBIA, Battle of the Nations. All of those major championships had pro fights at them at World Championships at the Battle
What
of the
years
Nations.
would you say like that? Because Battle of the Nations is less common for us over here now as the years go on.
Yeah, so I mean, Battle of the Nations came around in the early 2010s.
Okay.
And I think the pro fights came around about 2013, 2014, and then came on from there. And there was a specific promotion, if you will, rule set in Europe that was quite popular called WMFC. Again, was a former HMBIA brand, and those rules were used quite a lot, specifically for us in the UK and kind of throughout Europe. And they tied closely into the Battle of the Nations style pro fights, Outrance format. Obviously, it's changed since then, but that's kind of where it
Times
all
change.
started.
Yeah. So pro fights is something, and Outrance is something that you're just frothing at the mouth about. I mean, truly, like, so can we just let some of that out? Like, just talk to us about why you love this format.
For me, it's kind of the best single test of you as an individual. You've got the technical skill that can come with dueling, the sword, the shield work. You've got the intensity of Buhurt with the clinch work and the grappling. But then you've got an added level of jeopardy in the ground fighting, which isn't something that we see in any of the other disciplines, whether we're watching 5s, 12s, 30s, 10s, or singles duels, right? And for me, it's as close to a real kind of armored fight as you can get when you add in that extra level of I can also fight on the floor as well as fight on the feet, right? So for me, it's the ultimate test. It's the ultimate one-on-one test. I've got nobody else to save me. I've got nobody else to help me. It's me and one other person, and we're going to do battle for as long as we can. And one of us is trying to win, and one of us is hopingly not going to lose.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you have to say to people who whine about it? The whiners, like what do you say?
I mean, people whine about everything, right?
Right.
So you've got to try and
like
take
the
it with
ground fighting.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to take it with a pinch of salt. But from my point of view, the expansion of the ground fighting was a significant change. I recognize that. For me, personally, it was something that I felt if you can have a fight on your feet, you can also have a fight on the ground. And it takes an extra level of training to do so. So we went from having very skilled duelists that could negate the clinch, and if they went down, kind of turtle up and defend themselves for 10 seconds, to now actually having to work, right? Not accept a position, put in the ground game, get to your knees, reverse a position. And it changed very, very quickly. But what we've seen over the last 2 years, especially since BI adopted that ground time rule set, is the level of competition, especially kind of at the highest levels, as people have taken it more seriously, who do compete in pro fights. on the regular just go through the roof. I mean, now we're seeing so many back and forth fights where the ground game isn't as much of a big thing anymore because people know the positions and they can fight from those positions or they can defend from those positions. And it just makes for a more dynamic fight, in my personal opinion. It just makes it more dynamic and fun to watch.
Yeah. And I think that's like, personally, I want to see our sport get pushed into like bigger and bigger venues. Like that's good for the sport because it gets more people's eyes on it. It creates more competition. Like for me as a fighter, that's great. Like the more people that are in there, the more asses I can beat. But
that's literally going to be our mantra. We want you to get better at Boo Hurt so that we can fight more people all the time.
Yeah,
that's it. That's it.
But it's I say that, but it's just to be funny. We like. I think that making it like a better spectator sport is something that should be on people's minds. Maybe it shouldn't be your highest priority, but it should be on the list. Right. You know.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I think if you look at all the disciplines, your dueling, your pro fights, and your Boo Hurt, from a spectator, casual fan point of view, pro fights are so much more relatable.
Yeah.
You know, the basic person on the street walking by can look at two people in a structure, whether it's a wooden list or a cage or a ring, going at it and go, I understand kind of what's going on there. There's nuances, you know, there's weapons, there's armor and so on. But it's easier for people to kind of to latch onto, and I think we're seeing that with the popularity of AMMA in the US, right?
Right.
With the pro fight concept in a cage, which is familiar to many combat sports fans who like the UFC or Bellator or PFL, that casual fan can look at that and go, that's recognizable. I'm going to sit and watch this, and then hopefully they get drawn into it because they actually see that the fighting's real. The fighters are trying just as hard as any MMA fighter would, albeit in different conditions. And for me, that's why pro fights are so pinnacle to the sport, because it will mean that attracts more. It attracts the next generation. It attracts new people off the street. And hopefully then they get into the sport because they've seen that, and then they understand or learn about the other aspects that the sport has to offer and can go off and do whatever else they want then.
Yeah, and like, I think what is difficult is that transition from people who are new to armor and new to pro fighting being very low tier on the spectacle sense, because it's like you know, your strikes are not full from your body, like your clinch work on the ground is really hard to get out of those difficult positions when you're newer. So like there's that layer where we're watching skilled fighters, you know, you have much greater spectacle, like the bell curve goes up very significantly as we see more experience. And for folks like us who we are constantly looking to consume Boo Hurt content and talk about it and process it and study it, like we'll watch a fight which is very boring from the onlooker but very technical from the fight standpoint, right? And like, because with the swords and armor, like your defense goes way up and your offense goes a little down, right? Because if you were, you know, without armor on and swinging a sword, you could theoretically swing harder. But when we're seeing those strikes not deal any pain, and then we see when they do like add some pain, or you get a gap shot, or somebody who's very technical with where they're aiming, you'll see how fighters will react differently. But a lot of the times, like, we're ignoring weapon strikes in the first place. So dueling has a lot of like, well, he hit him, but did it actually hurt? Did it, you know, was it a relevant strike? And I know we're studying it that way. Like, as you know, I've counted as often as I'm not fighting or marshalling, and so like we're always thinking about like, is that sufficient force? Is that a relevant blow? Would it have mattered if it was a bladed weapon? That kind of stuff. But then when we get to those higher levels, like I was watching Daniel Winters fight one of my friends, Adam Millspaw, down here when White Company came to visit for Blood and Suds, and he was being struck like with shield punches and sword swings into my friend Adam that would like stagger him, right? Like they were, you know, and like he ended up actually bleeding from the face a little bit. That was just helmet failure. It didn't seem like it actually affected his personage. But like watching the difference in, I'm in armor, I know how to use armor to hurt you while you're in armor, it does change the game a lot. You know, it does really increase that level of spectator, because you know, it's one thing to get punched and a guy move back and his head start bleeding, because that's what a lot of people reference as like damage. But it's another thing when like you get somebody punched in the head and tripped, they fall to the ground, and you just like slam into them if that's what you do. Or I've seen a lot of the times people will be standing over a downed fighter, just striking them, you know, from standing, and that just sucks, you know, and like it just sucks. So so it is really awesome to watch, and like it has a lot less stop start in Outrance than in like your standard pro fight, or in, like you said, a downtimer like AMMA or IMCF, like, or I did like night fighting for a little while, and like when you have those stop starts, it can pull away from the story of two people like fighting to the death, you know, like to the extreme, right? So so I guess, like, you know, that being said, like, why have you, so I know you've talked about this a bit, but why have you chosen to have ground fighting be totally permanent? And also, is there a situation where you might pull that back a little, or maybe change the rules to like adapt to total ground fighting? So talk a little bit more about the grounds in specific.
Yeah, so I run a show here in the UK called Saturday Night Fights, SKF. We do cage pro fights, and we try and do 2 shows a year. And because I had the opportunity, I wrote my own rule set, and I took the bits of what I liked from other rule sets and added in the bits that I wanted to see, which included the unlimited ground fighting. So that was my initial kind of experiment. I didn't do it blindly. You know, I spoke to good friends of mine, Daniel Winter, Bohumil, top level world class pro fighters, about the prospect. And you know, they were excited about the potential of that being an idea. So we added it in there. My reasoning was that it kind of equalizes the fight based on what you choose to have as your skill set. And what I mean by that is you can have an exceptional duelist under the old style of rules where you've got limited time on the ground, absolutely lighting someone up on the feet, get tripped, and within 10 seconds they get a reprieve and they get to stand back up again.
Right.
And you know, you could have somebody who's a heavy wrestler, really good grappling, that has to walk through that fire to get that trip, get that takedown, and then only have 10 seconds to work from that position.
Yeah.
Which to me, I didn't necessarily like, as somebody who, when I first started in the sport and was doing pro fights, was very much more, I'm going to walk down and try and grapple you than I am going to try and strike from the outside. I wanted to give everybody the equal opportunity. If you're a great striker on the feet, learn to counter wrestle, keep it on the feet. If you're a great wrestler, you're going to walk through the fire and take someone down, but learn how to keep them there and potentially finish the fight. So for me, it felt like it made it more of an equal fight, which is why I put it in my rules for my promotion. Again, we were just doing it in the UK. And then when Buhurt International were looking at adjusting their rule sets, they looked at loads of different options, different rule sets that were out there. And the ground game was a conversation that we had, and they wanted to incorporate, and they did, as you've seen. And it did obviously rock the boat quite a lot. It changed the discipline practically overnight, from people having that reprieve of just 10 seconds on the floor to being stood back up again. Right. And, you know, we're now 2 years down the line from that. I think the first time that we trialed it was Carnage 24, when BI actually
remember.
Those first lot of pro fights.
My friend got the absolute piss beaten out of him. He was on like every highlight reel. Like, oh my God. I think it was by Colin Campbell too. So like, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, most people get the piss beaten out of them by Colin Campbell, right? So
yeah,
you know, there's no shame there.
Some people even like
it. Yeah, you know, from that point 2 years ago to where we are now, you know, just having done them at the World Championships and obviously multiple events running them now, we've seen a lot of people's skill level go up in both aspects. You know, you really good duelists that can strike very, very well with the hands. Now we've got really good clinch game and really good counter wrestling, and people that weren't necessarily the best on the ground at transitioning through positions to make the most of that 10 seconds have got better ground game once they've got the clinch. And I think what we're finding in most instances is when you've got two very equal match fighters, you get a very exciting, equally matched fight.
You really do. I mean, truly, you really do. So
Yeah, I think the biggest kind of whinge going back to the wine that some people have is that you can turn up to an event and be relatively inexperienced and have somebody that's super experienced. In which case the rules then make it significantly more challenging for the guy who's or
Right.
a woman, like, a lady who's not as skilled.
Yeah.
That becomes an issue. And in my rule set in the UK, we have classes of fighters. So we have a C class, a B class, an A class, and then a super class. So your super class is
Sport
your
class.
Dan Winters, you know,
Right.
your Dan Winters fighting the top fighters coming from Europe,
Yeah.
or
Or
Bohumil,
like Johnny
or
Porter,
Martin.
on our side of the ring,
Exactly, yeah.
right?
So Johnny would be a super class athlete. Emil Goose from
Right.
Poland, who has a good rivalry with Johnny,
Yes, we
super
love
class.
it.
Your new guy that's been training for 6 to 8 months, 12 months, and they're doing their first pro fight, they're a C class, and they're only going to get matched with somebody of the same kind of experience and time in the sport, so that it isn't uneven. That's how I do it on my shows
Right.
here in the UK, and it gives people a little bit more comfort knowing that they're not getting chucked in the ring with a Daniel or with a Johnny or an
Yeah.
Emil. They're getting put in there with somebody of similar relative time and experience in the sport. They both understand what they're out there to do, and it takes a little bit of anxiety away.
Hmm.
When you get to obviously the upper levels of the sport, and we're talking world championships, if you're representing your country,
It's World
you
Championships.
are deemed to be the best at that weight class for your country. We can't help you in if your skills aren't up to scratch with a
No.
Johnny or an Emil or whoever else, right?
Yeah.
So
We owe ourselves
yeah,
more than that. You know what I mean? Like as a
yeah,
sport, our goal is to be a sport. Like I do
yeah,
boo hurt, you do
yeah,
boo hurt. I'm sure, from all we've talked about we do boo hurt as the
yeah,
highest level of competition. If we don't take ourselves seriously enough that at the top end we're not allowing somebody to get the piss beat out of them no matter what. Like if you're there fighting that fight, I mean, that's what
mm,
we signed up for. That's what we want.
We gotta do
We
our
want
yeah,
jobs.
our ceilings
Yeah.
to always be raising. Like I want the best to exist, and I want them to want to be better, and I want them to get pushed to be better, as it goes.
yeah,
So
yeah,
and
yeah,
just to translate to Boo Hurt International a little bit here, you do have two tiers in Boo Hurt International, but the only
yeah.
major difference is it's 2 minutes at the highest level, 90 seconds at the lowest level, and then you have a TKO in the highest level. You're out for the whole match. If you get KO'd or TKO'd, you're done. But in
It's
the
Yep.
Division Two, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember which one's which, to be honest. Even though I
Two.
Yeah,
really
Or,
study
yeah.
it, I try to read into it, but it just never sits. But the lower level, if you're TKO'd in any one round, you still get to fight the next round, which we also like.
That's yeah.
So
Yeah, so we
you know,
put that in there. We put that in there to try and differentiate again skill levels in your BI competitions, your Bloods and Suds, your
right,
Carnages, your any
your
of the
big
competitions
events,
where pro fights might be. Yeah, where they might be being hosted. We wanted to be able for a BI purpose to try and differentiate some level of experience. So your tier one fighters in the US are going to be your Johnny Porters, your Nicholas Homers, your Brett Skinners, and
right?
then anybody else that's not quite at that level can potentially slot into that tier two category. Where if you get TKO'd under the rules, you only lose the round.
Yeah.
So you have the opportunity to be like, damn, I lost that round. Go back to my corner, get some advice,
Right.
come out fighting for the next round, potentially TKO and win that round, and then go another one. So it helps. We thought that'd help graduate people into the pro fight discipline a little bit more than just if you're brand new, you get thrown in 5 seconds,
Hmm.
pinned, you're taking punishment, and then it's over. That's your match over. That's discouraging for a lot of lower level new fighters that are building skills, building experience, and trying to build confidence. So yeah, in BI there are two tiers. Like I say, my rules in the UK, I break it into four, similar to like old school Muay Thai when you're getting
Right.
into Muay Thai and smokers and things like that. But yeah, at BI they wanted the two tiers to reflect the same that we have in dueling and that we have in Butter for the group fights. You've got tier one teams and you've got tier two teams, right?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thought process.
Well, and like also when you're running your own event, even if it's BI, right? Like you're still the one making those fight cards when it's a non-tournament format. So like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you might have everybody in Division 2 just due to the nature of the event, but you can still say like, okay, like this guy, even though their weight class a little off, maybe like we know that'll be a more relevant fight, like for the crowd, for them,
mhm,
like for
Yeah.
everybody. So like it makes sense. Like
yeah,
you have your own four. Everybody kind of has their own like setup too, which is great. And
yeah,
people really should consider implementing that when they're hosting hosting tournaments. So
I have why tournament style and why not match style? Like for Outrance for
talk about both.
Yeah, so from a BI point of view, tournament style purely guarantees you more fights in a particular weight class. You know, to put it in perspective for yourselves in the US, if you were traveling from where you guys are across to California for a tournament and you were signing up for pro fights, you're going to want to try and maximize the amount of time in armor and competition that you've got. So having the ability to run it as a tournament format allows you to round robin it, five people, you get 4 fights. Regardless of your result, you're getting that competitive time. I feel that matched fights are better saved for dedicated events where for example, I can match 2 individuals 3 months ahead of time. They know who their opponent is. They can do the research. They can train their utmost to know that they've only got one opportunity on that given event or that one night, and maximize the training and their output to suit. So the tournament format really just gives you more competition, or the opportunity for more competition at a given event in weight classes, versus matched fights giving you one opportunity to perform at one event.
Well, and I think intention is really helpful for people as they're going to an event, right? So like, so in that question, just so I can reflect what I'm hearing too. So like the tournament format, while still as prestigious, is a little bit more like, hey, this is an opportunity for you to get a lot of fighting at your weight class, and maybe you're not able to train. I gotta turn that off. Maybe you're not able to train in the same way for something like that because you're used to training for that one fight, like letting it all out in that one match. But now you're in a tournament, so it's just like you're getting more rounds in total, but you might also be tired. You have breaks that are a little bit longer. Like, do you find yourself, and this is kind of like my question here, do you find yourself delineating competition level between those ranked individual pro fights being at like a higher level of competition because it's that one match, that's everything that's going into it, and then tournaments are a little bit more like a training thing? Or do you find maybe there's just a different sport to it, a different study? Like, what's on your mind?
I think for me personally, the tournament format lends itself well to just build an overall experience, because there's so much unpredictability that you can face on that day. If you've got 4 or 5 fights in your weight class at a tournament like a Carnage, you've got to fight those people. You might not necessarily know those people. You've got to adapt on the fly. You've got to build real-time skills that then would go on to benefit you in the future if you're doing a matched fight. You learn a lot about yourself when you've got, a 4th fight coming up after 3 hard fights, and you're sucking and you're blowing and you're beating up and you're tired, and you've got to, for the want of a better term, nut up, shut up, get in there and get down to it, right? I think there's a lot of benefit to that in the tournament style, especially for people that aspire to get better at pro fights, because you don't have the research time. You've got the prep time for yourself, but you're prepping for unknowns, unknown quantities, unknown opponents. Whereas the match fights, if I've matched you with Daniel Winter in 3 months' time, you can go away, you can review the footage of his fights, you can kind of prep and strategize. That's a benefit to a matched fight,
Right.
Yeah.
where the tournaments, I think, just help build general skill, grit,
Right.
determination,
So that's
just to keep going.
Would you recommend this to, like, so at what skill level would you recommend someone who wants to compete in Outrance, wants to, like, is like saying like, okay, well, what can I do? Would you recommend them start, like, at what point in their conditioning and in their skill building should they enter a tournament, do you think?
I personally think if you're not pro fighting in training against club mates that are going to keep you safe in bad situations,
Meaning your, like,
probably
teammates,
shouldn't.
like people in your club.
Yeah,
Right,
your club
okay.
mates.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
club mates.
So
Okay, I'm sorry.
if you're not doing pro fights against people that you can trust, that you stand shoulder to shoulder with normally on a field, and hold your own, it's probably not a good idea signing up for a tournament just yet. You want the simulation to understand what you're getting yourself in for in an environment that's relatively safe before you go and do the unknown against somebody that doesn't care whether they hit you in a gap or have you bent over and hit you in the back of the thigh. So for me, I'd encourage anyone to do it. and I genuinely mean that. Anybody who wants to pro fight should pro fight at least once. If you want to pro fight a second time, then you've got to train a little bit more after the first one, right?
Right.
For me, do pro fights in training, get good simulation in. Don't have your teammates taking it easy on you, because it's not going to do you any good.
When you say
And then go
simulation,
from
are you
there.
talking about like sparring? Like sparring
I mean,
with like,
for all intents and purposes, you're going to get your training in.
right?
Then you will. The way that we tend to do things in my club is that if I've got guys that are gearing up to do pro fights, so they've got a match or they've got a tournament coming up, we will have them do pro fight simulation rounds. It might be your teammate, but he's not your friend for the next 3 minutes. He's going to fight you. He's going to put the pressure on you and do what's necessary for you to feel what it's going to be like when somebody else is going to do that to you in a tournament.
What does that actually look like?
So, prime example for us a few weeks ago, gearing up to the show we did last week, we literally go, okay, you're fighting in 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time. You're doing 90-second rounds. You're going to do simulations of 2 minutes. So you're going to be extra tired. So you'll do 2 2-minute rounds, and you'll do the first round against one teammate, and they're going to put the pressure on, and you'll have a break. Obviously, you break in between, and then you're going to do the next round against.
That teammate's like
Yeah.
the important part about the simulation aspect is like that teammate might be looking to fight you like that other fighter might, but they're doing so by hitting armor instead of a gap or something like that.
Yeah, they're not going to injure you. Yeah.
And
Right.
I have a question. You guys are doing this in full steel with steel weapons?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's like
so we
sorry, go ahead.
normally use sticks as an analog in most training sessions.
Safer.
So your fiberglass handles and things like that. But for people that are getting ready to go into a pro fight, when we do the simulation rounds, we use steel. We use steel because steel hits differently than the sticks.
Right.
They do find gaps even whether you're meaning to or not. And you have to understand what that feeling is actually like.
Yeah.
So we would run our simulations. Prime example, I'll give you one for me. One of my guys was fighting last weekend. We knew he was going to be fighting a guy that likes to box and punch, from White Company. So my job in the very first round was to go out there and just stand and bang and put the pressure on to make my fighter understand what to expect, what's going to come.
Right.
And then the next round was fresh with somebody else who tried to simulate the same thing, but they're not as tired as I am at that point. He's tired, he's feeling it. So I guess you can kind of link it to like an MMA fighter doing heavy sparring during camp. When you're winding down, they get the last hard sparring rounds in, but with people that they trust, and then they're going into tournaments. If you're not doing that kind of training with your club mates, the people that want you to win and that are there to support you and that are backing you all the way, you need to reevaluate whether you should be stepping in there against the unknown at that tournament. It's that. That's my personal opinion. You've got to be ready for it. And why? You're doing yourself a disservice stepping in there if you're not ready for it. You're doing your opponents a disservice if you're not stepping in there ready to give them everything that they've been training for. And that's the way we do it. Obviously, we do it as safely as we can to limit injuries, stop people getting knocks, breaking armor and things like that. But there comes a time, especially when you're gearing up for that one-on-one, that you've got to be prepared for a very, very hard fight.
Up until those simulation rounds, which it sounds like you'd recommend doing like one simulation round before, like a couple weeks before, or the week before, something like that.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we've got some guys that'll do more than that, depending on how long they're fighting for. If they're doing a 3-round fight, they might do 2-3-minute simulations just so that they know they can go really, really solid for what would be a lot longer than the fight they're going to have to fight in. But for the most part, yeah, we limit that to 1 or 2 simulations, probably a week or 2 before.
Yeah.
Then we taper down into the fights,
So
and then obviously the kind of
The deload week, as we call it.
and like right up to prepare.
Yeah.
So,
That's right.
So then safer practices look like in less imminent training sessions would look like soft kit, would look like what would you recommend?
Yeah, so we do a lot of soft kit drill. We call it drills and skills. So in soft kit, we'll be doing specific drills, striking drills. It might be clinch drills. It might be takedowns against the list or the cage if we know we're fighting in a cage. groundwork. So obviously with the ground game element, positional escapes.
You do all these skills in rotation, like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So we put a specific focus within our club on what events we've got coming up, and we kind of tailor our training towards that. So we've had three or 4 weeks ago we had the last Buhurt event of the season, so we had a lot of Buhurt training going on in the gym. But then we added a midweek pro fight session for the pro fight guys that were fighting 2 weeks after that last Buhurt event, so they could get pro fight specific training in outside of the melee training, the Buhurt training they were doing for the other event, right? So you've got to adjust your training to suit. But for us, it's very much drills and skills. We'll do it out of armor, soft kit first, just to try and get the positions, the escapes, the techniques into people's heads, or refresh them if they're familiar with them, but they haven't done them in a while.
Right.
Then from there, transition into armor, do the same thing. Drills and skills in armor is a big thing. You don't always have to be going 100% losing brain cells when you're in armor.
Yeah.
You know, armor fitness,
I thought that was what it was
positional
for.
awareness and skills.
No, I mean, you got to learn
Yeah.
how to move in your armor. You got to learn how to mitigate, like, because you're not moving in your regular body. Your
Right.
body is suddenly bigger and hookier, and
Right.
and like everything fits together differently. And grabbing onto another body that's in armor while you can only, make a mitt with your hand. Feels a lot different than grabbing someone's gi, or like,
Yeah.
like if you're practicing judo, for example, like it feels so much different.
Yeah.
So
It does, you're right. And transitioning from soft kit to, armor, trying to do a ground escape from a neon belly in armor is completely different to doing it in soft kit.
Right.
yeah.
The premise is the same. The thought process is the same. The logistics and physiology being in armor, to your point, sometimes completely different. So we have to upskill that in armor without necessarily going 100%. And then what we tend to do after that is we'll do isolation rounds. And what I mean by that is we'll do, say it's a 90-second round, but instead of just going full pro fight, we'll go, right, guys, the aim of this round is pro fight striking, clinch work, no
Right.
takedowns.
Right.
So guys are purely focused for that round on striking from the outside, striking through distance, striking into the clinch, working in the clinch, striking in the clinch to score points. And then the next round, we might take that out and we might go, right, we're just going to go groundwork now. One of you starting in a disadvantaged position, defend yourself, scramble.
Right.
So we
Which
do
makes a lot of
do
sense.
isolation.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
truly,
Sorry.
like, I mean, like, yeah, because, like, well, and, like, just for context, like, we practice judo. It's, like, you always start from standing, but, like, it makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. Like, we don't, yeah, I'm like, but we don't do any jujitsu or groundwork or anything. So,
Right.
gosh, we ought
Well,
to.
and so we should,
Oh,
because
no,
like
we
so what
have
you're
to.
oh my gosh, she's right. There's just so much to train every week. But so like what you're explaining is you'll start a round where somebody literally is already on the ground and somebody else on top, right? I mean, like that's such a foundational training experience or simulation or like just something that you're gonna be in, and if you're not training it, you'll be training it while fighting it, and like that doesn't really work. Like you can push for it. You can just say, well, now I'm finally on the ground. I've never trained this before in my life. I don't know how I got myself here. But
Yeah.
so that's a
Yeah.
great drill, absolutely, that I think everybody should incorporate if they're looking to do more ground fighting. And even for people doing like 15 seconds, like you could just start, hey, you're on the ground, do a 15-second timer, do that round after round after round after round. You're training for MMA, you want to be, do it, see what happens.
Yeah.
Right? Count your points.
Defend yourself, but
So-
but don't put yourself in an advantage position, start in a disadvantaged one. So
Right, exactly.
with the groundwork, most throws that we see nowadays are Sotos. Let's just
Yeah.
use a Soto as an example. Typically, if someone gets a cleaner Soto, they're landing pretty much flat on the back and the hip, maybe to the side, and someone's landing in an element of side control, typically on top, right? When we're doing those isolation rounds, we'll be like, right, you're on the bottom, the guy's in side control because you've just been outside tripped, as we call
Right.
it, but sort of Gary, you're on the floor. As soon as we start that clock, the intensity level can be high, but it's a safe way of them actually being like, oh, I've got to defend, I've got to move, I've got to dig for an underhook, I've got to get to a knee. Whatever process they need to work through, they're doing it in a very confined environment. And with the isolation rounds, the good thing is you can do an isolation round on the feet where you're just doing striking and clinch work. You're doing an isolation round where you're just doing wrestling to the floor. You're doing an isolation round with just floor work. And then you're going, right, full round now. Pro
Right.
fights, 70% intensity, It's all on, and everybody's in the right mindset as we go through training, doing those rounds now to put it all together. You've got to
Right.
remember it's a full toolbox, right? You've got to have your skills on your feet. You've got to have your skills in the clinch, whether you're taking someone down or you're counter wrestling from that point. You've got to have your skills to scramble and not accept the position when you hit the deck. And then you've got to have the skills to get out of the position if you get stuck. So
Right.
we try and isolate it so people build the skills, and then we try and bring it all together to culminate in that final kind of hard, heavy training session before they go to an event.
So, I have a question. Where did you get your wrestling skills? Like, have you been training in another like wrestling discipline outside of this?
Not necessarily a wrestling discipline. I mean, wrestling as itself is not very big over here in the UK. Obviously, judo is. Um, many years ago, I used to do Muay Thai and I did MMA at BJJ as a crossover. So, not necessarily an unfamiliar thing for me to go clinch to the ground.
Makes sense.
But for a lot of people, it is, right? For a lot of people, they're used to doing stuff if they come from other martial arts on the feet, maybe a little bit of clinch work, but not a lot of people practice the ground fighting. And obviously, it's very specific to what we do in the BI side of Outrance. So for me, I kind of try and use those skills. It doesn't have to be complex, you don't have to be a BJJ black belt to keep yourself safe on the floor in Outrance, but you need to understand what the positions are. You need to know what a knee on belly is, and if someone's dropping the knee, what you can do to try and get out of it or keep yourself safe. Side control, mount positions, mount escapes, and just general scrambles. We do a lot of wrestling and grappling elements outside of armor as well, just so that people can get the feel for it. But there's nothing like doing it in armor.
No,
And for me, I take those skills from many years ago. I think my last Muay Thai fight was 2011, so it's a
yeah.
long time ago. When I was a lot younger, but those skills are still transferable in terms of clinch work, positioning, trips, slips,
Well,
and
and
helping people then bring that into their game.
you're also like one thing that's really coming up like as we're talking is you're training for the game, right? Like Outrance
Mhm.
is a specific version of a pro fight game. 15-second ground fighting is a different specific version. And as we've
Yeah.
seen, Outrance just like in the last 2 years has become more prolific. There was the Raven's Nest. I marshaled the tournament out there where like we had a full Outrance card. It was great. And
Mhm.
what I have found is when you're going into training and you're fighting a fight with the intention of I'm fighting with limited ground fighting, I'm training with a limited ground fighting, you notice that people will strike different, move different, attack different,
Yeah.
they're thinking about different things. And so, as a newer fighter, like for anybody listening who really wants to get into Outrance, like Danny is showing a lot of really effective ways to isolate, as he said, training where you pick certain parts and really focus on those things. So that means that, like, let's say you're going into a tournament with your friend, and this is something Carly and I talk about all the time when we're training.
'Cause we're
So let's,
friends.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say we are. So let's say you go to a tournament or you go to a practice or you go to an event and like you don't have Danny George there to guide you with his guiding prowess of making sure everybody's safe and has the same mentality. Like we like to have these conversations with anybody we're sparring with, anybody we're training with, and we say like, so what intensity do we want to go in? How do we want to fight this? What's our goal? What's our
Right.
intention? So
Yeah.
if you're going into a fight, let's say, and we see this actually at BI tournaments often too, where it's like people are training, they'll go and they'll say, okay, we have a 15-second ground timer, but let's fight it like we're not fighting just for 15 seconds, right? Like that's the kind of conversation you could have if maybe you don't have the cardio to do a 2-minute round, maybe you're just really getting used to it, but like let's fight on the ground as if there was no timer. And that small tweak, even if you have a timer, that small tweak can help you start to build up your ability to fight for longer and longer on the ground, whilst getting people in the correct mindset where they're saying, I'm not just going to grab on and hold. I'm not just going to dead fish and flop and let you bleed on me and hopefully get those points back later, right? Like it changes like training intention, sparring intention, fighting intention, the conversations, that like I'm trying to model here as well. These are all extremely, extremely valuable ways to increase your efficacy in training and also your safety. Because like for us, like we don't have a lot of dedicated clubs, and I know a lot of people listening aren't going to have a dedicated club, but when you show up at a BI event, take a little step out of your comfort zone and start that conversation. And I promise you, if I'm there, I will help to make sure that that conversation is a well received one by your opponent. I tend to, like, when I was, for example, when I was at the Raven's Nest, I talked to all the fighters beforehand, and I was like, hey, like, what kind of fight do you guys, like, expect to have? You know, like, what, because I don't know them, like, when you're making your own fight card, like, I was just like, hey. And we had those conversations, and I felt people respected each other more, knew what to expect, knew what kind of, like, safety level, like, level of safety, what kind of a, you know, person they were fighting. And that was, you know, that kind of stuff. Really recommend, highly recommend.
This is appropriate outside of that. Like what you said, there's like the top tier, but then there's, like, you called it the super class, or what did you call them?
Yeah, we have the super class. So, you know, the highest level of experience, demonstrable experience, you know. People that you know. If Johnny Porter signs up to an event, that guy's a super class pro fighter. Talking specifically about pro fights, he's a super class fighter all across the board, right? But if he falls into that category, wins experience, world level, international level.
So, like, this would, like, these kinds of conversations prior to a fight are more appropriate for, like, the lower classes to understand. So that way you're understand. So you can get to that super class. So if you're getting, if you're just, like, I mean, I've experienced this quite a few times practicing with bigger people. I'm about the size and shape of a man, but not all the way. And there's some big boys down in Texas, but, like, there were some practices that I attended where, like, I'm not learning anything because I'm so outmatched and so outpowered that like I'm just sitting on the floor the whole time, watching everybody else do boo hurt. But that I figured out ways to mitigate that myself, but that was by having these conversations. And I think that even when you're at a tournament, even when you're at a match, it's okay to have those conversations if you're not at that highest level. So that way every match is a learning experience.
Yeah, and it has to be a learning experience. Whether you win, whether you lose, you've got to take something away from it. The positive is that you've actually done it. That's always the positive. Regardless of your result, whether you've lost, whether you lost badly, you did it. And that's one thing. But the next thing is, how can I do better next time? And we're trying as best, or I am as best I can as a coach, as well as a fighter, to ensure that people in my club at least are as well prepared as possible for what they're signing themselves up for. Having an understanding of being in their position when they were a little bit less experienced, a little bit newer, as I was myself going into those tournaments completely unprepared years and years ago, and thinking I'll do all right and getting the absolute proverbial kicked out of me, And I think that's a lesson for every aspect of the sport. It's not just this.
Right. What do you, as a coach, and you've seen, you've been part of, you've fought a lot, you've been, observing a lot of fights, like, what do people come away from fights with the most that they want to improve on? Like, what do you see, like, them saying, like, oh, I really want to work on X, like, what's coming up the most often?
Specifically on pro fights, it's always the gas tank. It's always people feeling like they wish they had a little bit more to give. And that can be two things. That could be just generally managing your own emotions and your anxieties before you go in there, because that can sap a lot of your energy. We all know about adrenaline dumps. The mental aspect of keeping yourself calm and kind of regulating your own emotions goes a long way to not blowing your gas tank quickly.
That's a topic actually that we hope to have an interview on sometime here. So that one's already on the docket. Continue. Sorry.
And then the other thing on the gas tank side is just pushing yourself that little bit more in training. Doing that little bit more when you feel like you don't have another round in, you've got to condition yourself to do another round. And pro fight intensity is significally higher than duels and butter, in my opinion. There's nowhere to rest.
I'd agree. Absolutely.
You rest when you TKO them.
Exactly. The pro fights typically are so back and forth that if I see my opponent take a step back and they look winded, I'm piling that pressure on, right? And I expect the same in return. If I'm flagging and I'm suffering, I expect to suffer more because they recognize that. There's no hiding. So you've got to suffer in your training to not suffer as much in the fight, right?
Embrace the suck. That's one of my mantras. I just say, like, you know what? If it sucks, that's good.
One thing
That's what you want.
Yeah.
You want it to suck.
One thing that I've heard, and I'm just parroting like science that I've heard that I like. So everybody take this with a grain of salt. Like I've heard that you have to feel stress in your body. Like you have to feel that cortisol, like that. Oh, I really want to stop, and then push through that to tell your muscles and tell your body that like, hey, no, this is the new level that we need to take it to. So,
Right.
you know, yeah, everybody listening, like that feeling that makes you want to stop. Like,
That's the best point.
That is the point that you don't stop. Like that is like you should congratulate yourself for getting there, because that means that if you push beyond, you've pushed your body to the next level.
That's where you earn it. Like you earned that spot, and every second, every minute, every hour you push past that spot, that's where you get the most value for your next match, for your next training, for your cardio tank. Like I always like to think of it like when you start fighting in anything, when you start doing any training or anything like that, but Buhurt specifically, I find this the most important. Your body tells you you're done way before you're done, because your stress, like your stress hormone, the cortisol, like all of the the compounds in your brain are saying, hey, you're in danger of dying. I'd like you to stop. Yeah. And then because we're doing sport and we're training, our brains go, oh, I can just stop. Like I'm training by choice. But if you're in a real life situation where you're not, you'll push through, the adrenaline will come in and you'll be able to get past it. Sometimes we like runner's high is similar to this, where like that first half mile, that first mile, no matter how good of a runner you are, you're like, I don't like this. I want to stop. And if you don't look inward and say, no, body, we're going to keep going, then you probably will stop. So every time you get to that level, you kind of elongate your goalposts of how long you can go for. And you want to be training like that in your weights training, in your sparring, in running, in your mindset, in your daily life. Like you could just be sitting there like, I don't want to do this. And you're like, yeah, but if I got better at the mindset of doing this, I would be better at Buhurt. You know, little things like that. Yeah. So, you know, I find that like what's most important for people to really take away of building that cardio is when your body tells you you're done, you're probably only 20% into dying. You have like 80% more
dying
that like you're not dead yet. If you could keep pushing, because there's a point at which you push, you die, and you're clearly not there. So you probably could push harder. And you know,
it's mindset and mentality, right? And I know we just kind of touched on it, that when your mind's screaming stop, if you can just take that half a second to be like no, and push a little bit more, it's better for you and for your development, for your fitness, sport specifically. And the other thing I think as well, just talking about the biggest takeaway, most people they're gassed and they're tired and how tired they felt. You should be training, your rounds in training should be longer than whatever you're intending to fight.
Right.
So if you're going to a tournament where you're doing 90-second rounds, you should be doing 2 minutes minimum.
Yeah.
If your rest time is going to be 45 seconds, you should be cutting your rest to 30.
Yeah.
Because you'd be surprised that extra 15 seconds of breathing and the extra 30 seconds of work capacity makes a massive difference when you're in there.
Yeah.
And then when you can control your emotions, it doesn't feel as much of a big deal. So yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of people that like to do this sport because they just want to be in armor and they want to have fun. That's absolutely fine. You don't have to train to the extreme, shall we say. But if you're going into an environment where other people may be doing the same thing and they're training to the extreme, you've got to at least push yourself a little bit. You know, that's the biggest takeaway. Push yourself as hard as you can, and then you can always come away with your head held high regardless of the result, knowing that you did everything in the gym and everything on the night or at the tournament to win. It doesn't really matter if you lose.
Yeah. You know, and I know a lot of the highest levels of fighters, or the people who are leveling up, know this kind of stuff. What do you think that they don't know? Like, what do you think needs to be brought into that no one's doing yet? Or that you see the highest 1% is doing and it's making a difference maybe?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me is just the intensity in strikes. We don't see enough hard, heavy strikes. especially in Outrance, you know, they can make all the difference. You're going to start at striking range.
You say that, and
I'm not.
I'm thinking of Bohemil. Like, is that like what you're talking about? That's scary.
Yeah, I mean, Bohumil has obviously the skills to do everything really, really well. He's an excellent duelist. He's a brilliant pro fighter, one of the world's best, and obviously he's an absolute machine when it comes to Buhurt. But if he's hitting you competitively, he wants to hit and he wants you to feel every one for the most part.
Right. I want to hurt you.
Yeah, I marshaled.
It's relevant.
I marshaled some of his duels, and I wanted to stop it. I knew I could not, but I wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think specifically in pro fights, you know, you want to be throwing everything you want to throw has to have the intent and the purpose to be a fight any blow if it lands. I think there's a time and a place for throwing tippy taps and feeling out. That's the first few seconds of the fight. But as soon as you're immersed in it, everything that you've got to throw, every strike has to have meaningful purpose.
Right.
That's what it's about. That's what you're in there for.
What does the opposite of that look like? Like, what are you seeing now that is it just like, you know, like soft taps, like a lot of like flourish, like what's...
Yeah, I mean, in terms of pro fight specifically, you know, we'll talk about the BI rules. Every strike is weighted equally. If it lands and it's clean, it's a point. But that doesn't mean that just because it lands, it gets counted. If it doesn't land with any kind of intent, if it's very limp-wristed, it doesn't have any impact and intent to it, it lands flat for whatever reason, you know, the striking level needs to come up a little bit. At the top level fighters know this. You can see it. As soon as you watch their fights, you're like, oh, damn. Every shot that goes in, you're kind of like, oh, there's something on that. You should be practicing your striking as we're going through, and you're learning your skills to be intentful and impactful.
Oh, I have a question about this. So I've been trying to solve this problem. Like, I know that I need to learn to strike hard. But it hurts. It hurts to strike hard. What tools do you recommend for learning to strike with power that are easiest on the body?
Yeah, like for example, we find this a lot with tires, where like it'll push back into your elbow, into your bones, into your joints.
So from a conditioning point of view, the first thing is you've got to condition the joints and your body to be able to swing something that heavy, right? A lot of kind of club and mace work.
No, this is not going to be a club and mace podcast. No. Sorry, go ahead.
I've been training it really heavy.
Especially for single-handed weapons, whether you're swinging an axe, a mace, or a falchion, or an arming sword.
Right.
You know, anything that's a kilo and above at the end of your arm, it's a relatively high stress at the end of your arm as a lever, right?
It pulls your body apart. You know,
it can do, and the heavier the weapon or the more forward weighted it is, the more you've got to be able to control it or recover it. So, clubs are good. You know, Indian clubs are good for the wrists and the elbows. Maces are very, very good for the shoulders. Then from there, really it is pel work, but it's graduating levels of pel work. So we'll start with sticks on a heavy bag as opposed to a steel falchion on a pair of tires. Right.
Is that the sorry, my hands are off screen. Is that kind of like your boundaries? Like the lowest level is sticks on a heavy bag and your highest level is steel on tires?
Yeah, so when we're teaching people to use a sword, we start off with a soft kit sword just to go over the basics of striking combinations and how things move and work. They're only a couple of 100 grams, right? I mean, the soft warrior ones are like 750 grams or something.
They're nothing.
Then once people are familiar with that, then we'll step it up to something that's slightly heavier. So, you know, your fiberglass handles that we've spoken about, the wooden versions, you can drill and pour lead in. You can weight them a little bit more if you want, and then we'll use them on a heavy bag. And the reason we use them on a heavy bag is because a heavy bag typically has a little bit more give in it than a tire does. You don't get the shock and the reverberation.
Right.
But you're building up the conditioning of using a heavier implement to impact something that isn't a soft sword. And then from there...
You create bad habits. Not to jump in per se, I guess I am. You create bad habits when you do too much soft kit, I've heard. Too much soft sword. Yeah. And I've noticed this in myself. You know, I've had some shoulder impingement because I believe that I learned a lot of my striking habits with a weightless weapon. And it causes that like offside to have less of the lat engagement, less of the core engagement. My body can be loose, but because when I'm tired, like you lose a lot of the lower part of your body when you're just swinging with the arm, and you get it all in the shoulder. So like that high, you can see it on camera here, like that high spot, it puts my arm above my shoulder and puts a lot of the strain into here. And I've literally got impingement or tear from the rotator cuff, like because of that. So
So it's all about not only learning the skills and the principles of striking, but it's building the level of conditioning that your body's used to. To take someone who's completely new and give them a 1.5 kilo falchion and go hit those tires, they're going to get repetitive strain injury and die really quickly, right? And I think the other thing that people underestimate is the body mechanics of actually using all of your body, to your point, not just your arm.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of kinetic linking, not to go into bro science, but there's a lot of kinetic linking that goes on when you're throwing a sword at someone. It starts off in your foot position.
Right.
Yeah.
It graduates through your legs.
Yeah. Keep going.
You know, it accelerates through your hip, through your back muscles. You know, you're engaging. You shouldn't just be using your wrist and your arm. It should be your entire body, and it comes back to that learning to strike. And inherently in doing so, your strikes just get heavier naturally.
Yeah.
Because you're using more energy efficiency through your whole body.
Yeah, I was to say with a lot less effort, you know.
Yeah. Oh, so here's the big word you started that whole thing off with: throwing a sword strike, right? So like a lot of the time, and I've learned this the hard way and just over time, and I really hope people try to incorporate this. But the intention of a sword strike is you're not touching them with a weapon, you're not hitting somebody with a weapon, you're throwing the weapon at them.
Yes.
You are you are using a throwing motion.
That's
right?
Like I played baseball growing up, and that's how I learned. Like once I went, sword baseball.
Wait, do they call that handball in Europe?
What do you guys call it? They don't have it there. It's an American
well, football and soccer and handball.
Like,
never mind.
But we call like I mean you've seen American football or sorry not football. You've seen baseball.
I threw it off.
Yeah, of course.
You throw a lot. You throw that's like
so
90% of the sport.
With like clubs and not to like get on too much of a tangent with that, but like the specific form that I've been working is the outside circle, which you can't see my hands, but the outside of my body is a outside throwing pattern, which throws a heavy weapon away from my body, and then the inside is a jab or like a punch across the body, right? So it's like, but you're still throwing it. So and when you're throwing something, you use your whole form to throw it, and then as you throw it, you release the sword's energy at a certain part in the chain, and then when you hit somebody, you snap it on them in that last moment, engaging all the fingers. So like and we've noticed more that the pinky, the ring, and the middle finger are what connect your lat to your hand, and then the pointer finger and the thumb connect more of like, sorry, I can't really show on the camera here, but more of the forearm and less of the lat. So like really, when you're throwing something, you have to use those fingers, but you also have to make sure you're able to recover. There's so much to it. I'm sure we could. I would love to just like have a whole seminar on it and just like help people understand that, because I didn't understand it, and I'll and just to be clear, like a lot of people are coming into Buhurt, myself included, where we have some sport background, but not understanding the mental technique of something. You're gonna use incorrect muscle groups, and you're gonna like kind of do it wrong. And as a bigger person, it's easy for me to throw something heavy or to strike something heavy at somebody because I can cheat by being big, but like when you really have to engage all those muscles and the entire kinetic chain from ground through the foot, through the ankle, all of that, like it's a very different experience. So throw your weapon at people, just don't actually throw it at them. Like keep it in your hand, please. That's a whole nother thing. So
that's a rule.
Yeah,
it's a BI rule.
But
yeah, I mean the biggest thing for me when I'm kind of teaching people is that the arm motion from the shoulder to the wrist should be like you want to crack a whip.
Yeah, that's a good way to think of it.
The tip of the whip is your falchion or your axe or your mace is when it's hitting someone. That's just the arm motion. The body motion is very akin to using a two-handed axe, right?
Right.
You want to drill someone with a two-handed axe. You want to drive from your feet, swing your hips, twist your body.
Right.
It's exactly the same thing, but I've just got something in one hand rather than two.
The hands do
So
something
yeah,
different.
Yeah.
Each hand, like
yeah.
this,
I mean,
this one pulls, this one, yeah,
Push pull.
and it
it does,
rotates the
but
body.
with a falchion, with a falchion, you similar kind of thing. If you're just getting used to doing it with one hand, you're pushing with these fingers and you're pulling with these ones, right?
Right. There you go.
It's that movement and that motion is very, very similar. You're using a lot of the same muscles to, regardless of weapon group. But a lot of people just get used to using just their arm to try and snap shots in. So yeah, I think to come back to the original point, regardless of level, emphasis on meaningful strikes, putting power into your strikes. It helps you. It helps you score. It helps your opponent feel them. It helps marshals count them.
Right.
Like it helps all around in
helps
terms
the
of
crowd
pro
go,
fights.
"Oh
if you're-
my god!"
Well, and
Exactly,
and
yeah.
when
Yeah.
you hurt somebody or you stagger somebody, you actually layer more technique into the game too, because you're like, oh well, now they don't want to get hit like that, or
Yeah.
and like that's something that you can also level up in and increase your generally increase your skill, and it's another layer of relevant fighting that you might not see in a duel. Some people, so I've dueled people. And I've seen duels with longsword and arming sword that hurt a lot, and it changes how people defend.
Yeah.
It's very effective and very relevant.
Yeah.
So, sorry about that. So I had a couple other questions, but we're kind of like winding down here.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've gone over a couple of the action items already, so I think it's best to like just kind of like wrap it up with talking about that. Like, we have these in our show notes. They're recommended to us by Danny.
Well, I actually wanted to ask one more question.
Oh,
before
I'm
we,
so
like,
sorry.
wrap
Okay,
up.
yeah, go ahead. No,
So
I'm sorry.
I did want to chat a little bit about armor for Pro Fight,
Yeah.
for Outrance, and how you might, if you're somebody who wants to specialize, how you can also still maybe do some boo hurt or not do some boo hurt. Like, what are the main components you're changing? Like, just give us a quick and dirty of like what you're thinking about in Outrance and how it relates to boo hurt.
Yeah, so if we're talking, if you want to specialize, you want the lightest and most mobile kit possible that you're willing to take the pain in. It's simply put.
Right, understood. Mobility, just to
If you wanna
define that, do you mean mobility in joints or in like what, all of it? Like,
Yeah. So full body mobility in the sense of if you're scrambling from a takedown position to try and get to your knees to reverse, you've got to be able to get to your knees in the first place. And if you have very heavy, restrictive, articulated legs on that you can't get to your knees in, you might struggle. So you might want floating. Same on the arm setup. You might want more mobility so that you can actually clinch, get good deep underhooks. Pummel for whizzers in a clinch, and strike more freely. Therefore, you might want floating arms. Brigandines are good.
right.
Coat plates for the extreme are probably lighter and better in that respect. But most people, if you have a titanium brig that you wear in Buhurt, you can use it as a crossover for pro fights without much of a problem. And you get to a point where it's like, how far do you want to go with saving weight and increasing mobility? What I would say is if you've only got one kit and you can only afford one kit and you want a pro fight, go do it.
Yeah.
Like, but if you want to be a specialist, there are areas that you can save. You can run a shield mate under your shield rather than a gauntlet. You can remove your van brace under your shield as long as it's covered. But you're accepting the risk of someone. Yeah, you can go smaller rebrace, like you say, smaller shoulders, but you're accepting the risk that if you're on your knees trying to scramble up from a position, someone hits you in the back of the shoulder, you might not have as much coverage there, right?
Right. And it's more intimate when you're on the ground. Like somebody can, for all intents and purposes, pick you apart when they know where your gaps are, And I've seen some people like wear more effective, like tabards that cover their gaps and like things like that, which is all fine. Like all these things are allowed. But as Danny said, like if you're training to hurt people, as we should be doing in fighting, in this type of fighting, pro fight specifically as well, and your opponent has less armor, you will naturally hurt them more. You will find those gaps. You will make them regret choosing less armor as your striking power goes up, right? And so it equalizes like what people are wearing.
Yeah,
and they might be more mobile, but hey, they're wearing half greaves. That's a legal striking zone. I was watching a fight at Siege this year as that was the night marshal. So I guess I got to be the closest, which is so fun. I get to like my favorite reason to marshal is I get to be like, I'm right here watching Boo Hurt.
That's how he sold me on it. He was like, you can watch Boo Hurt up close. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to do that. Yeah.
So, but like there was somebody with a katanga like doing Outrance, and he had minimal queese protection just due to the design of his kit. And his opponent, when he was on the ground, his katanga flipped up and like, I'm sorry, but now he knows where your freaking leg is. And he's just like, ka-thunk, and you're like, oh, oh. And I'm sitting there like, oh God, you watch the man scream, like, which is great. Like that's the kind of fighting we look for, right? Not necessarily like, abusing people's gaps, but like if you're fighting to the extreme, you're going to use legally what's in the rules to do so. You'll pick people apart. I'm really intimate with you for 6 minutes. I'm going to find out how to break you.
From my point of view, I think everybody should go out there with the intention that you're going out there to win. If people get hurt in the process, they know what they've signed up for, but I don't want to get somebody injured.
Yeah.
There's a difference between the two, right? Hurt is on a Monday morning, you sat in work feeling sorry for yourself because you got a big bruise on your ass because you didn't have your hip plates on or whatever.
Yeah.
Injured is, I can't go to work on Monday because I'm completely broken.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that, right? So I think it's probably worth saying that because, if you're getting yourself into a pro fight with another human being, you've got to expect that you might get hurt. You might get hit in a gap. Somebody might target you very specifically because they can see the inside of your biceps open or the inside of your elbows not covered properly. They're going to do that because it's within the rules. But we're not trying to injure people, I'll hurt people if I get the opportunity, I will hurt because that's the aim of the game. They'd do it to me. But from an injury point of view, I want everybody to have fun and walk away from it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So going back into our action items, thanks for jumping into the armor topic. And
back to what I wanted to talk about. No, I'm just kidding.
No, of course.
We want to just to wrap it up. This is our TLDR, too long, or TRLL. Or
Too long didn't listen?
TRDL.
You have to listen to
TRDL.
get to this point.
Sorry,
you don't
I couldn't put it together. TRDL.
Yeah.
I don't want to listen. What do I need to take away? We talked to Danny George about this a little bit before we came to this, but we want consistency. Keep showing up. We talked about this a little bit. Go to the tournament, show up,
put on your armor.
Put on your armor.
Fight the fight.
Except take the L, take the W, learn something from all of it. Just keep getting in there, and also train. Show up for training.
Yeah.
So
for sure. I mean, consistency is the key, right? If you don't turn up to training, you can't expect to win at your tournament. If you don't turn up to the tournaments, you can't expect to win at a tournament. If you've got to, even if it's just a small percentage of fitness better every time, or a small percentage better at striking or ground position, you're gaining every time. And consistency is the key. Even when you've got no motivation to go to training, get in the gym, blow out the cobwebs, and be there. Go to training, go to tournaments, practice with the team, fight with your opponents. Consistency is key.
Right.
You will see massive improvements if you keep consistent.
Right, and you can't go back in time and change what you haven't done, but you can always make the decision in that moment. The discipline tells me I should show up to this training. I know I should. Boom. And you'll just be better off for doing it every single time. Yeah, and consistency doesn't always look like 100%ing each week or every day. Consistency looks like, hey, I had a bad week this week, but I'm going to make this week a good one. Right. Or bad week last week, but this one's going to be a good one. Or I have these barriers in my way, but I'll be right back on it, and I'll just get it in when I can. That's consistency. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's keeping yourself honest. Yeah. Everyone has life, things happen, but it's being able to go, okay, that got in the way, or I didn't get to train in there, or I didn't pull that PR this week. Right. So what? Get back in the gym. Next time round, go again. Right. Next time round, go again. And keep going. That's the point. That is consistency. It's keeping going when you don't necessarily want to. There's a couple of key pointers that come up in some of my personal work with therapeutic mentoring, where we talk a lot about how we build habits, how we get ourselves through difficult things, how we learn new skills, things like that. And there is a lot of study on it, and I think it'd be hard for us to really like jump into it now because we could do a whole episode. But like breaking down difficult tasks into smaller bite-sized chunks will help you chain from one thing to the next. And also like, and I would just like wrote a little document on like how to build the habit of pel work, and I hope it helps people. But part of the idea is like, if you're always ending work by going to training, you're more likely to just go through the motions and get yourself in training, and you're like, wow, I'm hitting the bag already, you know, like I didn't even have to think about it, because
like I brush my teeth, I do my pel work.
Right. Oh yeah, every day. Well, we tend to get overwhelmed with saying like, oh, training is going to be like, well, I got to drive to the gym, and then I got to put on my gear, and then I got to talk to this guy for 5 minutes, and then I got to like do that, you know, and then like, and we get really caught up in that. Break it down and let yourself just do the next thing, do the next thing, do the next thing. And you'll find yourself training more often, really looking forward to training. And like, because our bodies, they fight us. Our bodies do not want us to do things that are hard. I promise you. Your body is hardwired to let you lounge on a rock somewhere like a lion and or whatever you want to, whatever animal you want to be, and just go, nothing is going to murder me today, so I don't have to work hard. Truly, it's true. So like when we want to do hard things, hack your brain, learn a little bit about how to like have that mentality and use consistency and discipline, and you'll find yourself a little bit better every single time. Try to be better every time. You literally will get better every time. I promise. So, and then heavy strikes, but you really, you know, that was our number 2 action item was talking about heavy strikes. But I mean, you truly gave that topic everything it needed a little early in the episode. So anybody listening, you go back and listen, because that was a whole conversation. We don't need to have it again.
Would you summarize it for us though?
Yes.
Yeah, so you know, from a pro fights point of view, and I think sport wide, make sure your strikes are meaningful, they're consistent, which means make sure you're training to throw them at people, to hit people, make them count, not just tippy tap.
Yeah, and you would and like, so we're talking about like using a training implement, either a weapon itself or using a heavy stick that simulates a similar weight, and hitting something with sufficient force as practice.
Right.
That's right.
Earlier in our episode, we talked about like how to scale that so that you're not hurting yourself early in your training.
Definitely don't do too much of it where you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Do enough.
Do
some more.
Start with lightweight. Start with soft targets. Move your way up to heavier weights and harder targets.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, if you don't know where to start, you know, I'm sure all 3 of us would be more than happy to chat with you about it. So
there's
feel free to reach out. And there's lots of people that we can send you to, you know, like part of the reason we're having these conversations with people is like, this is just more knowledge that we get, that we can share, that we can listen to. Like this is a conversation I would want to listen to. It's all stuff I really want to know.
I would have absolutely liked to like I'm 6 years into my career, but like there's so much that I don't know, because like I was training in, you know, our gym, and we had our focus, you know, and that was just like to be a good melee team. So there's certain aspects that like I haven't been exposed to as much. We definitely got some stuff in there, but like as much that I'm like really excited and interested. And I don't think that I'm an island, like, well, I guess I kind of was an island, but like I don't think that I'm the only one that experiences that, especially like in America. Like we're so like geographically spread out that there are people who are very isolated, that still want to participate and still can. They just need the right tools.
Right.
So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I would say that wraps our topic.
Yeah.
Now I really want to make sure that you get the chance to celebrate. Let's celebrate Danny George, right? So what do you have coming up next? Like what's something that like is on your mind? Like what do you want to share with the people? Like who are you? Like you got the floor. We're gonna shut up and give me some time. Give me some Danny.
Yeah. So bit more about me. Got into the sport 2016 after watching a documentary about it. Started just as a fighter, found a team. I've been the captain of the Northern Wolves now for coming up to 4 years. So, you know, I do, as a fighter and a competitor, first and foremost, I do everything in the sport. I like dueling. I really love sword and buckler. I like sword and shield. I don't do long sword. I don't do polearm. I'll train it, but I don't do it. Obviously, pro fights, absolutely love them. have my own show in the UK called SKF. We had our 4th show last weekend, and we booked in our next one for early next year. So that's what we're looking forward to kick off our UK season. And then obviously the group fights. So as captain of the Northern Wolves, we've built the team, we've pushed the team, we've gone from being able to have 5 fighters maybe turn up to a UK based tournament to traveling all the way to Carnage and fighting in the tier 1 there 2 years ago, against the likes of the Executioners and Dominus and everyone. And we went to Libershin for the World Championships. We fought the 5s there. We did the 12s as Team UK. We did the 30s as Team UK. For me personally, my goals are just to get back in there full time next year. I'm coming off the back of a pretty bad injury at the back end of last year, in November last year.
Yeah, you were on crutches at Carnage, right? Or something?
Yeah, I was very much hobbling around at Carnage earlier this year. The week before I'd just been cleared to start walking again. From the actual.
So take 20,000 steps. So take 20,000 steps a day that weekend.
Yeah, that was a painful reminder of what walking was like. But yeah, so coming off a serious injury and taking the competition side this year relatively easily, apart from fighting at the World Championships. Next year, I'm doing as much as I can to get back in there and just start enjoying the sport again for what the sport is for me. Turning up, having a good time, hitting my friends, and going home again.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Oh, and you marshal a lot too, right? Like just like a quick aside.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I'm a senior international marshal with BI. I got that at the World Champs. So obviously being on the board, I was one of the people responsible for organising those World Championships in Hungary.
Wait, so you scheduled it so you could go get your rank up higher? Clearly, it's an inside job.
Yeah, I wish. So yeah, obviously. So yeah, obviously helped organise the World Championships with Larry and Stephen and Ola and Dusty. Wonderful. And the rest of the board, Zav. We obviously put that on over 4 days. I was there as a senior night marshal to help with appeals and reviews. I marshalled the pro fights, so I marshalled the lightweight category and the super heavyweights for pro fights at the World Champs. I marshalled and obviously supported throughout that event, and then jumped in my armour for the 30s, fought in the 30s, jumped out of my armour back into my marshal kit, and then marshalled for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So you're really after. We're clearly best friends now, because like every tournament we go to, it's like fight, marshal, fight, marshal, fight, marshal.
I got in and out of my marshal garb to kit, like 3 times marshals, twice kit. Like it was.
Yeah, so the World Championships was funny because on that particular day, I did the captain's briefing at like 9 o'clock. It's like, right, get all the captains in. This is what you expect for today, 30 versus 30, where everyone was going to come in and sit and wait and everything else. And then as soon as that finished, I was like straight over to the UK tent, marshal kit off, armour on, straight back over, and then, into fighting the 30s with Team UK. Against US, we fought Australia, we fought France. We didn't make it out of our group.
Right? Of course,
you took MVP.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just glad I made it through without any major injuries again, and then came back out, took the martial stuff back on, and went back to finish off for the rest of the day. That's awesome. So, yeah, I am involved, at all aspects and levels of the sport, from being a fighter and a team captain to a club owner to running events and an event organizer myself and everything else, fully immersed in the sport. And I'd like to think that gives me a good perspective on a lot of the issues that people have. I can kind of relate to the fighter side of the issues with marshalling sometimes, and I can definitely relate to martial issues with fighters sometimes. And I can relate with stresses over badly organized tournaments sometimes, because I understand as an organizer, but I can also sympathize with organizers because I know what it's like organizing events and catering to multiple teams across a weekend, right? So, yeah, for me, I just love the sport. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, whether I am fighting or whether I am marshalling or whether I'm organizing or whether I'm just supporting. I love everything about the sport, and I have done since I first got involved.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, truly, that's why we're all here. The podcast is literally called Boo Hurt, Boo Hurt. There's no other words.
Yeah, because
okay?
like we say the words so often around our house. We're like, "Oh, Boo Hurt, Boo Hurt."
Yeah.
we trip on the street, we go and
Boo-hurt.
like if we like trip and like catch ourselves, we're like, oh, good boo hurt.
Yeah.
Very
Hey,
good.
you know, you don't want to fall over.
You're practicing all the
yeah.
time.
Every day. Yeah, I'm like gripping the, like literally it's wake up. What could I do better in boo-hurt today? So like,
I mean, we live a life where like we can center it around boo-hurt. Like
right.
we have
It's high ranked on our priority system,
Yeah.
which more, also more topics to like bring up in future episodes too, like just how to prioritize something, how to so much.
I'm the same as you. I'm lucky in that respect that my wife's obviously involved as the head of the tournament committee. She's the UK head marshal. She's at the events that I'm at. We were at Carnage together earlier this year. I mean, we've been overseas, I think 5 times this year to different events. Carnage, we went to Ireland, we've been to Portugal, we've been to Hungary. Like we travel, and my daughter, she's 14 this month, she's been involved since she was knee high from when I first got involved all them years ago. So
how many kids do you have?
So we have one daughter together, and then I've got 3 stepchildren as well.
Oh, wonderful.
So they're a lot older though. So my daughter's been in around the sport. Yeah.
She's got 4 years.
Can I? I'm so sorry.
They're like what?
Like how was it? Like, did you just like immerse her in it right away? Like take her to tournaments and just kind of like raise her
pretty
around
much straight to training. She running around carrying swords, and whilst Daddy's getting beat up as the new fighter at training all them years ago, and she's been around it ever since. But she's at that age now where she helps us with the events that we run. She's a whiz at running live streams. She helps us run live streams when we stream tournaments or obviously our pro fight events. She helped out at the World Championships. She was helping run around and grab teams, and I'm sure a lot of people that went would remember her running around and getting people geared up for when the fight was next and directing. So it's a family affair for us. That we're all involved.
Our family's gonna fight your family.
Yeah, I have a 13-year-old son, but like he was at an age and I entered it where he was at an age where he was like, this is something that my mom does. It's not cool. But now I'm starting to win him over. Just now.
Yeah.
Oh, he's making the credits music for our podcast.
He'll be the credit roll at some point.
He's composing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But
cool.
That's so cool.
So, shall we cut to credits?
Yeah, I say we just cut it off abruptly right now. No,